This is a No Surf Music, Burning River Fireside Chat.
With guest Brent Kirby.
I'm your host, Jason D. Diesel Hamad. For the best in Americana, alt country, indie rock, and more, point your browser to nosurfmusic.com. So, this is another edition of No Surf Music's Burning River Fireside Chats. In fact, it's the last edition recorded here in 2014, so getting ready for a new year. And joining me today is a stalwart of the Cleveland music scene, so it's great to finish off the year with him, Mr. Brent Kirby. How you doing, Brent?
I'm good. Thank you for having us. Funny you mentioned the Burning River because we're like 8 feet from it right now.
Exactly, yes. This is actually the closest I think we've ever been to doing a Burning River Fireside Chat on the Cuyahoga, so that's great.
That's awesome.
This is actually the second interview I've done up here at the Music Box Supper Club. First one was with our friend Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. G.S. Harper.
The man.
Indeed. But today we're actually in the big room upstairs, which is just beautiful, isn't it?
It is awesome. Yeah, it's a great place. That is a great venue. Colleen Miller from Chicago. She's just been doing a great job, And it's kind of it's a really good venue, and you treat it well, and that always makes a difference when you're a musician, I think.
Indeed. And from the customer's perspective, I mean, the rooms are just beautiful. Like, there's so much hardwood, it's ridiculous. And the stages are both great, and, it's just a great place to see a show. And
it is.
Food's not too bad either.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Can't complain about that. So if anybody hasn't been up here yet, definitely Music Box Supper Club is a place to stop by.
And it's right on the Cuyahoga, so the Burning River. That's what we're talking about.
Indeed. Hopefully we'll have another warship pass by tonight, because those are always fun.
Oh, man, yeah.
I've seen it a couple times. It's pretty neat.
That would be awesome.
Indeed. So anyway, we are up here tonight for a show that you're doing in the Downstairs Supper Club.
Correct.
With Brent Kirby and His Luck.
Yes, that's the name, yeah.
All right. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, because that's a fairly new project for you, right?
Yeah, I've been involved in all these other bands, the Jack Fords and Hey Mavis and New Soft Shoe and just all these other bands. And what I found is that when I went out to go play a Jack Ford's gig, I had a whole catalog of songs that I couldn't really play that were my solo band stuff. And then when I go out with my solo band, then I would have a whole Jack Ford's catalog that I wasn't able to touch. And I think artistically it kind of left me a little frustrated, because I when I play, I do solo shows or whatever, I kind of just I traverse all the catalogs, and I kind of just go with what I'm feeling at the moment. But I couldn't do that. I felt a little bit limited. And so this band is a band that's designed to basically morph into all these other different things. And the guys in the band are really, really accomplished musicians and have been playing for years and are great listeners and great players. Ben Nieves on guitar, really, really great. Has played with Big Brother and Holding Company and just on and on and on. And Chris Hanna has been a guy on keys that I played with for years and has been on some of my records, and I do a lot of my solo gigs with. And so he was an obvious choice, and he's B3 and all this stuff. So he's great. And this guy named Travis Payton on drums. He's a great drummer. It has a different style because he comes from a different he's kind of like a hip hop drummer, kind of like a funk gospel, and it's totally foreign. I shouldn't say totally, but it's definitely it brings a different feel to songs that I've played for years, and that's really refreshing to me. And then the other guy is Kevin Johnson on bass, who's just a complete badass on bass, upright and electric, and good vocals, and so I kind of put this band together and not really knowing what to expect, and then all of a sudden we started playing. It was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I feel like I can really express myself, and we can go through the different tunes, and the feel is different. I think because of I've been Americana for so long, and people get stuck with labels. And I'm guilty at that too. But what I found myself was that whenever anyone talked about me, they didn't acknowledge all the different things that I did. They acknowledged one particular thing, And so you'd find people who didn't like my solo catalog and then like the Jack Fords or vice versa. And it was just, again, it was just a thing where I kind of felt undefined, and like, okay, I'm all these things, but I really am not showing that. I'm showing all these different things at different points, but
Gotcha.
not all as one thing. And that's what I think this new band is all about. I call it his luck because I feel lucky that they show up, and I feel lucky that I get to play with these incredible musicians, and lucky that they, play on these songs and are part of this with me. And it's been real refreshing. It's very fresh too. I feel like we're just the tip of the iceberg, and that there's a lot of possibility, musically with what can happen.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's actually a really interesting concept because basically what you're trying to do is define yourself by broadening out what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you say, you have so many projects. It's, you mentioned a few of them, but that's why I say you're one of the most ubiquitous people on the scene. Like, pretty much every night, it seems like one of your bands is playing somewhere, or you're hosting the 10 by 3 at Brothers, which we'll talk about a little bit in a bit.
Sure.
But I guess what you're trying to do, from what I hear, is blend all of the different aspects of the Brent Kirby catalog together in one place.
That's it.
So how do you feel when it all shakes out then? Where is the band really centered? Is it more of an Americana thing? Is it more of a rock thing? Is it like, or do you just literally just play everything?
I think you would have to hear it. I mean, there's definitely some jazz elements,
Well,
and there's definitely some soul elements, and there's definitely some, Americana elements and folk elements and rock, and that's the thing I really like about it. I think that it really it's a little bit undefinable as to, like, if I were to explain to somebody what we sound like, we kind of sound like a lot of different things, and I think that comes from the stylistic influence of all the guys. Ben has a very he's a great jazz background, and so does Kevin, so it kind of just takes this, depending on the tune, we can kind of just feel it out, as opposed to, okay, here's my part, and this is what we're playing, and it's always like this. It's more organic, and it's more for the moment, kind of, as opposed to this is the same way we play it every time.
Right.
It is much more organic, I feel, much more expressive.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, that's very cool because, I think that's something we're seeing more and more now as the independent music scene really becomes more important than the commercialized music scene. Because I think a lot of those labels you were talking about were important because the big companies wanted to get their stuff in the right bin.
Yeah.
And so it had to be fit in this or fit in this or fit in this. But I think where music is most interesting is where it all blends together. You take your different influences and fuse them and see what happens.
I think I'm at this age I don't really give a fuck, to be honest. I really, seriously, it's a thing where I just really want to create good music and really want to be happy doing that. Mm-hmm. And to me, all the other things that are that people hope for and wish for and dream for in the music business or whatever it's called, none of those things are possible without having good music, I believe, and I find that I am attracted to the performers and the artists who are really doing something that seems true to them. It's something that seems representative of who they are, and that's what I'm really trying to do, is just say, hey, I've been around the block a time or two, and I just really just want to play music with great people, and like I said, for the moment, and really, what are we feeling right now? What's going on, and politically or whatever? What is everyone feeling, and how can I look at my songs and say, okay, we can express how we feel that way? Maybe that's too deep. Maybe it needs to be more superficial than that. But really, I do think it's organic, and it's something that it feels good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the difference between looking at music as an industry versus music as an art. Mm-hmm. And, obviously, for a professional musician, where you do this full time, you have to have some consideration for making money, because otherwise you're going to be.
No, that's what I do. Yeah,
street.
I got to pay my bills.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you don't necessarily have to do more than pay your bills if you have the right attitude. You don't have to be Katy Perry and put out let's face it, just absolute crap because that's what the 15-year-old girls all buy.
Right.
And I think that, you know, the more you look at it that way, the better your success is because it's on your own terms. You know,
it's interesting that you mentioned like Katy Perry. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she loves, you know, a lot of the Katy Perry stuff, and so I've listened to a lot of it, and I understand it. I understand the pop aspect of it and the production of it. I'm fascinated by it. Actually, I mean, it's amazing to me, all the different things that go into making something like that click with people. But in the same way that an archaeologist would look at a skeleton of a T-Rex in the same sense, you know, it's interesting,
right?
You know, what makes this tick, what makes it work, and you know, I think even all those different things too. And that's the other thing I think that I've been doing a lot of is just really listening to a lot of different music and kind of just gleaning what seems appropriate from it. You know, not Katy Perry necessarily,
right.
but you know, just different things, and I think that's you know, you're right. Art versus the business of it. You know, there has to be a balance, but I think I'm more. I think I've worked hard enough that the business part is just going to happen, and you know, like those opportunities are going to somewhat present themselves in a way. I still have to work towards those things, and I still have to have goals, and I make my goal lists every year, and you know, I still work hard at it, at that part of it, but you know, the art is really where I'm kind of like, I just don't care. I just want to do what I want to do, and I'm not worried about what people think. And I don't, you know, I just really just want to go out and play and perform good music for people, and hopefully people connect with it. And if they don't, that's fine too. You know, to me, those connections are really having to do with, you know, you have 5 guys that walk on stage who had 5 completely different days and have showed up with 5 completely different moods, and you know, where are we today versus an audience of you know, they have all their things and their things that they're going through, and that, to me, that creates the experience. And when you make that connection, it's strong when it's true like that, you know, as opposed to a something that's shoved down your throat as it is in commercial,
right,
you know, radio or music and that type of thing.
Right. Well, I actually just last year had an interesting experience, and it's sort of coming to fruition now because I'm working on the review for January. It's a band called the Hello Strangers. They're out of Mercersburg, Pennsylvania, and I've known them for years.
I've heard of them. But
yeah.
I haven't seen them.
Well, I'll make sure you get the music because I think you would dig what they're doing.
Yeah, sure.
But they. Like I said, I've known them forever, and they were always just a local band. And, you know, they had a couple of, like, self-produced EPs out and whatever, but they were just clearly ridiculously talented. And then through a whole series of events, they ended up having the opportunity to record an album down in Nashville with a Grammy-winning producer, with all the trappings of the music industry.
Sure.
And I just thought it was so fascinating, kind of like you said, almost as an archaeologist, to like watch all the little parts go together and see how, you know, what they wanted to do came up against what the producer wanted to do, and how the, you know, art form was forced into the production line, and, you know, what he may or may not have understood about the music, and what he may or may not have wanted to get out of the music being different from what they might have wanted or what I wanted and all that. And so I think it's really interesting, you know, that it is so different on the local level, on where people can do what they want to do and make it happen versus that whole really machine of what comes out. And even great people get wrapped up on that. You know, I mean, you look at somebody who's not huge, but is certainly, you know, been around and is part of that, like Lucinda Williams or Steve Earle or something, and they just have a different feel, you know? It's never as organic. Yeah. So I think it's really interesting to see it on the local level and see that happen.
Well, I think anytime business enters the situation, you got people you got to please, and you got people that got to pay for their jobs, and all of a sudden the responsibilities become much more, you know, and I think that changes things. You know, it changes the purpose of why you're doing something, you know.
Gotcha.
Due to the responsibilities, you know, when you have a kid, your whole life changes,
right? You
know, and everything that you do is all of a sudden, okay, what do I need to do to make this work? You know, and those kind of things change things, I believe.
Well, definitely, because I mean, from my perspective, I've lived my entire life based around the principle of not having any responsibility whatsoever, Like, I mean,
Good for you.
well, no, but I mean, it's true. Like, if I get kicked out of my apartment, okay, I can go live in my van, and it won't bother me that much. But if I had a family, that would be a completely different thing. If I want to go to Guatemala tomorrow, I can grab my passport and I'll be in Guatemala.
Right.
I might starve to death once I get there because I don't speak Spanish and I don't know what I would do in Guatemala, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah.
So I think, it's really interesting to see, how people at different points in their lives and different perspectives, find what works for them and do it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you do a goal list every year. And since we are coming to the end of one year and the beginning of the other, is there anything that you can share with us about what you're looking forward to in 2015?
Well, I have a new Jack Ford's record that we're working on that'll be out next year. That'll be out in March. And then I'm taking this band and some guests to the studio in January. We're going to do a record, and that'll be out. I have that scheduled for May. And, from that point, it's really, just getting out of town a little bit more. Okay. And balancing, making a living versus getting out of town. When you go out of town, you're not going to make a ton of money. Mm-hmm. That's part of the deal. And there's so many more expenses that are involved as opposed to just walking out of your house and driving down the road. And so, it's a balance of those. And I already have the year planned with spaces for getting out of town and the strategy to do so. And so it's just a matter of, just executing, whatever that is. And putting out a good record. I mean, that's really the goal. I just want to put out a good record that feels current and but the solo record needs to feel current, and it needs to feel it needs to be that step forward that I think from a solo perspective that I've needed for a while.
I got you.
It's been 2.5, 3 years since I did my last solo record, and it's not like I haven't been doing anything. I worked on 2 Hey Mavis records, and working on this Jack Ford's record, and so that's those are the major goals, for 2015 is just putting out some good music and getting out of town more, and just building upon what I have. The 10x3 is something that I do at Brothers Lounge, which you mentioned as well, and I'll continue doing that. I feel like a part of the thing that I try to be an example of, because I don't think it's just my job to do it, but I think it's everyone's job to do it, is the community aspect of it. Mm-hmm. What you're doing right now by sitting down here talking to me and putting it online and doing it and posting videos of the bands that you go see and the bands you support, it's that type of thing. Mm-hmm. You get it, but not all the other people get it out there. The musicians I'm talking about, right. That we really need to all encourage each other. And that's where, part of my mission as well is like, okay, how can I fold all these people in to different things and connecting people and the 10x3 is a good thing for that. If people connect there, the bands have been started, and I've seen people grow as performers, and so that type of thing is something I've always felt pretty passionate about. Like, hey, this is something I need to continue. This is something I need to encourage and be a good example for people. To say, hey, be friendly, be courteous, clap, listen, support, slap them on the back, say it sounds great, and buy records and talk to people. And if everyone were to do that, we would all just be a better world if everyone would just communicate better, and support each other. But I think as far as a music community in a hometown and a homegrown music community like Cleveland, which is a great community, there's so many talented people. We all just need to help each other. Somebody needs something. Let's figure out a way to make it happen. Yeah. I really feel like 10x3 makes me a target for that stuff, which increases my workload, no doubt. Like, hey, do you know someone who could do this, or do you know somebody who, a drummer or this? But
or hey, listen to my EPs and tell me what
But I try to do as much as I can. Right. It's a part of it. I do. I feel strongly about it. Like, if I'm going to be in a position where I can have a songwriter showcase or be playing out or performing or writing music or making a living, I need to be an example of how to do that in a good, positive way.
Absolutely.
So that's the constant goal that is always there.
Right. Right. Well, and I think personally, I've lived all over the country, and I've sort of ended up back in Cleveland almost by mistake. I mean, I grew up here, and I was planning on just staying for a few weeks and moving on, and then things happen the way that they happen. So I've had opportunities to, move to Nashville or go back to New York or go out to California or whatever it may be. And, I specifically decided to stick around here for the moment because I really do think that the Cleveland scene is something special.
Yeah,
and I think and people like you, I think Greg Harper is another good example. People who are somewhat established and who can, give some of their knowledge out to other people and help everybody make those connections really make a huge difference. So it's pretty awesome what you're doing too. I think that the scene wouldn't be the same without that. So.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I just try. Every day I wake up and I'm working on something. That's the hardest thing about being self-employed is actually, you wake up and there's anxiety. Like, okay, what do I got to do? My to-do list is always, growing.
Right.
And there's just so much to do, I think. And especially as an independent musician, I mean, there's so many different ways that you could do things and so many different strategies and what hasn't been done yet and what has been tried and true. And, that there's freedom in that, but there's also a lot of responsibility and anxiety that comes with that because a lot of it is risky.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to me, it's worth it. It beats sitting in a cubicle trying to sell something that I don't feel any passion about.
Absolutely.
Being able to just create music, I don't have the same anxiety that I used to have about a sales goal or anything. Maybe I should. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, I was going to say, I mean, I kind of have the opposite problem. I need a little bit more anxiety when I'm doing my writing to push me to actually do stuff instead of, that can wait for tomorrow. I'll watch The Walking Dead tonight or something.
It really is
a balance.
Hard. It's hard, and I forced myself to just sit down and not do things. To do something that's completely non-musical. I think it's important to have that balance. And I'm just on constant improvement. That's where I am in life.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it's a good goal.
It is. Everyone should be a constant improvement. How can I make my life better for everyone else around me and myself?
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Well, I always say, you have to judge an album from somebody who's early in their career much differently than you would from somebody, later on. And what you really want to see is that they're always moving in a good direction. Now, whatever direction they may want to take it, obviously they follow their own art, but they're learning and they're adapting and they're finding, and if you can find an artist like that early on who you have faith in and that they're going to grow, that's what I love doing.
Yeah, watching somebody transform into that and to become something completely different and spectacular is a really amazing thing.
Indeed. And I think, everybody out there, might not necessarily have the same resources that we do to hear new artists all the time or to hear new music, but go on Pandora and just listen for the random person that comes on,
right?
And say, "Wow, this is really cool," and check that person out,
right?
I mean, one of my favorites is a songwriter by the name of Kelly McRae. I personally feel she's the best songwriter of my generation, and I only heard her because of a random song that played on Pandora, and I looked her up, and she had 118 fans on Facebook. And, now she has done so much in the 5 or 6 years since then. It's just great to see.
That's amazing.
And, and I think everybody can do that. It's such a satisfaction to know, you picked a good one.
Right,
Yeah. I think that's one of the fun parts about the independent music scene versus, being told what you need to do and all that.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about the Cleveland scene in particular because, you are so involved. But I was kind of just comparing, what I see here to all sorts of different areas. And I think you also have a good perspective on that because you have lived and played in different locations around the country.
Yeah.
So number one, how did you end up, sticking in Cleveland for the long haul? And what do you see as different here than in other markets or scenes that you've been in?
I grew up in Wisconsin, which is in a town called Oconomowoc, which is right outside of Milwaukee, which is a medium-sized city on a Great Lake.
Okay.
Eastern European ethnic background, is in there, and easy to get around, and Midwest, and so
and plenty of snow.
And plenty of snow. And so when I came to Cleveland, I had a 2-year plan to be here, and then I was going to head out to California was my plan. And I worked for Sam Ash Music at the time, and I was the GM for that store. And so they moved me here from Chicago to run this store, which I did. And then I ended up meeting some good friends, being in a band. I was playing drums in that band, and still playing out and starting to just do different things. And I ended up staying, and just something about Cleveland just draws people in. And I'm not the only one that this has happened to. I've had many discussions with many different people about how Cleveland just draws you in. And I think it's, for me, it felt real comfortable because it felt exactly like Milwaukee in a way, know. And it felt very comfortable. It felt Midwest. It felt the size was right for me. But then I saw all the other things that and I think we're experiencing a renaissance in Cleveland as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about the art, and you think about the orchestra, and the music scene, and the food scene, and we have this wonderful lake, and we have this great park system, and I'm a big hiker, and all these things kind of just fit in place. And all of a sudden, then I had a family, and it was like, okay, I'm here now, and this is my home. And I am as Cleveland proud as anybody, but I'm not from here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here 13 years, but I am as Cleveland proud as any Clevelander, because I truly believe that I believe in Cleveland.
Clevelander, brother. Come on.
Yeah, well, someone said to me that Cleveland isn't a city; it's more of a cause, and I kind of believe that. Like it's like, okay, I will defend Cleveland to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do believe it's a great place to live. Cost of living is low. It's centrally located. I can get to my parents in 8 hours, and Chicago in 6, and New York in 8,
mm-hmm.
and Nashville in 8, and so it's really it's a good place to be. That's what brought me here, though, and I never planned on staying, and it sucks you in
mm-hmm.
somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like I say, I grew up here. I mean, I grew up in Hudson, so it's half an hour south of the city itself. But I really had to experience everywhere else before I kind of understood that myself. And I love New York. Like, there are parts of me that just want to move back to
New York's a different. But that's like
it's a beast comparatively.
It's apples and oranges, literally.
But at the same time, like being here now, so much of Cleveland reminds me of the things that I really love about New York without a lot of the other garbage that you have to deal with, like literally garbage.
I think it's easier to digest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meaning that it's just, it's easier to get around. The traffic's not as bad. You don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
New York has a particular energy that's just so unique and so great. And it's awesome.
And there's nothing else like it.
There's
in the
nothing
world.
else like it. I mean, it's really it's a great place, and Nashville is the same way. It has a completely different culture, and I loved being in Nashville too. I still love to go and visit and play in those places. But yeah, Cleveland's it. It's home.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me much more of Brooklyn than it does of Manhattan, and I like that. It's much homier.
Right.
It's not always like move. We've got that ability to sit back and drink a beer and have fun and not have to worry about the $25 cocktail being perfectly made and all that you do in the trendy bars. Although there is some of that in Ohio City without a doubt.
Well, as a musician too, you can make a living here. And I've had this discussion with people before, like you have the 3 music centers, which would be New York, LA, and Nashville, and maybe those are the old music centers, but still, I think they're pretty predominant. It would be very hard to make a living and pay all the bills and do all those things if I'm just playing for tips,
right?
And so I think about that too, and that seems to make sense. And there's a great support system for people here, and people are very loyal here to homegrown things. If you're talking sports, well, that's no question. I mean, people are very, very into their sports here.
Oh yeah.
But they have that same attitude about other things too.
Indeed. And I mean, I like when I really got into local music first, it was on the New York indie rock scene. And as much as there is going on there, none of those people could do it as a job. It just was not going to happen. Like they might make up enough money to pay for their practice space from their gigs,
right?
But they all had to have full-time jobs because there was just no way to pay for a New York apartment and all the stuff that goes with living there.
Right.
Whereas here, like you say, the cost of living, is a lot lower, and it's a lot easier to find gigs that will give you a little something, maybe not, huge, but enough to get by, you know?
I think so. Absolutely, there is.
So definitely is one of the cool things that makes this a more viable place for music, I think.
It is. And I mean, you look at Akron and Kent, and they're great music scenes down there too, and they're not that far away. And so I really, I believe.
It'd be nice if we had a few more venues in Akron, but that's another story
well,
entirely.
those things are happening. I think people were saying that about Cleveland at one point, and here we are in an awesome venue that just opened this year.
Yep.
And there's more and more coming. I'm constantly hearing of places to play that are having music, and that's what it's all about. I mean, you have a bunch of places to play, a bunch of musicians who are playing, and the more musicians you have playing, the better the scene is going to be. And it's not all cover original. There's that everywhere, but there's really, really people, really, really talented people who have, original things going on that it's really, it's refreshing.
Gotcha. So let's talk a little bit about some of that talent, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because, like I said, I think you probably have a better perspective on it than just about anybody.
Some of it,
you do.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, you never get to see everybody.
That's the thing of people. I never get to go see bands.
Yeah.
I'm always performing or playing. So, like a lot of my friends, I get to see in passing.
Right.
Right. I get to see them at just opportune times. But the 10x3 definitely keeps me connected.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that makes it so neat, especially because a lot of those people are just the beginning of what they're doing,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, you get more established people in there all the time too, but for anybody who doesn't know, the reason that it's called the 10x3 is because it's an open mic every Wednesday at the Brothers Lounge Wine Bar. Excuse me,
prearranged open mic. So I arrange all the time slots are prearranged.
Right. So if you are a musician and you want to play, go ahead and contact Brent off of his website.
It's more of a songwriter showcase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a great little listening room. It's one of those places where people are there to hear the music, and I think that makes a big difference too. And the environment that you set up for that is great. But it's really an opportunity for anybody, whether they just want to, try out and see if they can sing 3 songs out and, make it work, or somebody who, maybe has been around for years but just wants to get out there and kick 3 songs and have fun.
I don't screen anybody. If you have 2 original songs and a cover or 3 original songs, you deserve an audience and come out and play. But surprisingly, there's only a handful of terrible performances that I've seen. Most of them are really earnest and great. I mean, for what they are, for the person, they're up there doing their best, and everyone brings their A game with that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that always surprises me about it, because I'm so used to open mics where it's just like I'm just gonna get up and see what happens.
Yeah.
But like, people who are doing the 10x3 take it so seriously because they know that it's one of the places where musicians in Cleveland, come together. And like, it's an opportunity to not just like, maybe make some new fans, but also to meet some of your peers and to impress them and to do that. I think it's a cool environment.
Well, I think the prearranged part of it is important too, because the show is posted, days before, and everyone knows their time slot, so they can tell their family and friends, and then their family and friends are coming out, so they don't want to suck.
Right.
And so they come and they really play well, and they play as well as they can for whatever they're doing. Like I said, it's honest, it's earnest, it makes sense. I think we might be getting a boat coming through soon. Nice. Something out there. You can see the birds are...
They're a little chattery out there, that's for sure. Well, we'll keep everybody posted on what's going on in the maritime. No, it's perfect. That's why we call this the Burning River Fireside Chats, because you never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
If a giant ore ship comes by, you will get the play-by-play.
Yes, sir.
So, I guess from your perspective, being able to see so many people coming through and really, have your finger on the pulse of the Cleveland scene in a way that a lot of musicians don't, because they're just playing gigs all the time and they only get to see whoever might be on their bill. What do you feel is the best aspects of the Cleveland scene right now, and who do you think are some of the up and comers that you really think deserve some attention?
Ray Flanagan is great.
I believe he's sitting downstairs right now.
Yeah, he's probably listening.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But
doubt
I would tell.
I've
told him that to his face, so it ain't no secret. But he's great. Ray Flanagan,
amazing guitar player.
Yeah,
and
just
amazing.
He's one of these fixtures on the 10x3 that shows up every week and just plays with everybody. And he's turned on into the musician that can just play with anybody, which is not something that people can do easily. Ray's great. Joshua Jesty, Sean Brewster, an old boy. Great musician, songwriter, Rachel Brown, Nate Jones.
I just saw Nate with Demos, actually.
Yeah.
He was opening up for him out in Cedars. So
Yeah.
it's always great to catch him.
It is great to catch him. I played drums on his first record, actually.
Oh, did you? I did not know
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
But he was a solid drummer last weekend. You should come out.
Yeah, I would have done it
earlier this week.
We talked about it, but my schedule, well, not about that gig, but
Right.
about playing drums. My schedule just didn't afford itself to that.
Gotcha.
But, gosh, who else? I mean, there's a ton. There's a ton of people, more than I can even.
I could throw in Katie Kuzer myself. I think
gosh,
she's going to
Katie.
be a great
Katie
songwriter.
Kuzer. Oh boy, it's.
You don't want to forget anybody either. I know how that goes.
Rebecca Jean. She's from Akron, Kent. Gosh, who else? There's a whole bunch. There's a ton. I mean, the great thing about the 10x3 is you show up every week, and every week I at the end of the week I'm like, man, I'm just so lucky to be doing this. It's my Monday of the week, so I don't work Monday or Tuesday,
right?
And so Wednesday is my first night out of the week, and then I work the rest of the weekend. But it's such a great way to start because I get so inspired by seeing all the people play, and every week I go away and I'm like, man, this is just awesome. The way everyone is, it's so inspiring. It really is. All those people are great. I mean, you could come any given week and see somebody great. I really try to make it a show, and I would say probably 90% of the time I'm able to arrange something that comes off pretty well. Yeah.
And the other 10% of the time, there's a lot of really good beer and wine to.
The other 10% of the time, yeah, I mean, that's the great thing. You just never know what you're going to get, Right. And the thing is, it's 3 songs, so if you hate it, just wait.
Move on to the next, exactly. Well, yeah, and that's, honestly, I don't get up there as often as I would like.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a Wednesday night.
Exactly, and there's other stuff always going on, and the times that I do, though, it's always one of my favorite things to do, because you never, even when a couple of the people or whatever it is, you still never know what you're going to get, Like if I go up there to see Ray, I know what Ray's going to deliver.
Right.
But I, probably don't know 5 or 6 of the other people, never heard them before at all, and it could be anything,
Any given week, I probably have 4 at least, maybe more, that I have never even met before. And that's pretty huge.
Well, it's a great thing to just be able to experience new music all the time, I think. So
yeah.
Anybody out there who has a Wednesday night where they don't have much to do, go up to Brothers Lounge at the Wine Bar, because it's great food, it's great drinks, and it's always fun music. So
it is.
It's a great time. So there's just one more thing
yes.
that I want to touch on real quick, because the show's going to start here. But one of your projects is the new soft shoe. I can't even speak that. New soft shoe. Yes, yeah. Say that 5 times fast. Which is, of course, a Graham Parsons tribute. And the first time we ever had you for an interview was actually at G.S. Harper's Townes Van Zandt tribute, and we got a chance to talk about him.
Yeah.
So because you are such an aficionado of Graham, I just want to talk about why you chose to put his music out there for the masses, and why you think that's so important.
It was a drunken dare. Really. Okay. I've always been a huge Graham fan ever since college. I heard "Love Hurts" through the wall of my roommate's bedroom.
Okay.
And I was like, man, I know that song because I knew the Nazareth version, but I'd never heard it like that. And it was something just it how certain things just come to you at a certain time and they just connect. That was one of those things that did. and he had borrowed the record from a friend of ours, and I took it from him, and I never gave it back. And so I was a huge Graham fan for a long time. And then when I moved to Cleveland, I was working at Sam Ash. I got introduced to Al Moss, who plays pedal steel and plays with Hillbilly Idol and a bunch of other people. And him and I had a conversation, and this was 2002 probably, long before we even did the New South Shoe. But we talked about it then. We were like, hey, it'd be really fun to do those Graham tunes, It was just talk, and then later, there was a bunch of us sitting around drinking, and we talked about Graham and how the tunes were great. And I'm like, well, what if I had this Thursday night at the Happy Dog, and I'd been doing it for a year just solo, and I wanted to change it up. And I was like, hey, you guys want to show up next month and do this? Play a bunch of Graham tunes. I'll send people to a list, and let's show up and play. And so we did, and we've been doing it. Next month's going to be 5 years that we've been doing it, and we've played at the Graham Parsons Festival, Graham Parsons Guitar Pull in Waycross, Georgia, 3 times, and it's just Graham's hometown. And I played, met his daughter, and just there's a whole Graham community that is out there that it's amazing how these people are they're so. It's like a secret club of some kind or something. I don't even know how to describe it, but you meet these people, and it's just like, they're so. Everyone agrees on that,
right? Right.
There's no debate. Everyone's just like, oh yeah, this rules. We're going to do it, and it's just been such a pleasure to do that, the New Soft Shoe stuff, and I really don't. You mentioned tribute, and I don't take. I don't contest that word, but I really think of it more as a cover band. I think of a tribute as a band that goes out and tries to emulate who those people are.
Gotcha.
And we don't.
Right. Yeah.
We put our
own
own spin on it. We put our own twist on it. And some of the versions we do are versions that wouldn't really. I've never heard anyone else do. And I think that's really the fun part of it. And we always are creating, and we have a set list of 90 songs that we've done, and we've done Sweetheart of the Rodeo with the outtakes, and G.P.
Nice.
Grievous Angel with the outtakes, and International Submarine Band, and all this. We've done the records and really tried to make it interesting. I just got an email from Andy Leach, who plays guitar in that band, and he's also the head of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Library Archive, which is a very convenient thing to have a guy like that in the band, not to mention that Andy is just a badass guitar player and just great. He when Donovan was in town, Donovan had recorded this song about Graham, or had written this song about Graham, and so he played it for Andy, and it's an unreleased song. But so Andy sent it to me the other day. It's really, really pretty great, and so I think we're going to try to do something like that.
Nice. Nice.
Try to finish that song and play it. We'll need to get all the proper permissions,
right?
Make sure everything's on the up and up and cool. But those are the kind of things that doing that. The whole thing was just a drunken dare to show up and play Graham Parsons songs. It had nothing to do with going and playing these festivals and doing it. But man, it's just really been a good brotherhood and a good crowd and a good another connective way to reach people and just be really passionate about something. There's no pressure, no anxiety with that band. We don't rehearse. We just show up and we play. And that's what's really a fun thing about it, yeah.
Indeed.
And next year, what we're going to do is we play in the Happy Dog every year, and or every month. And so next year, we're actually going to branch out and do some different shows. We're going to play down in Kent and at the Venice Cafe. We're going to play at GAR Hall in Peninsula. And so we'll be branching out.
I would love to see
shows.
Graham at the GAR Hall. I think that would be such a beautiful thing.
I think it would be too. So we're going to be doing that next year.
Nice. Well, I will definitely be there for that.
And the East Side Happy Dog too. We'll go back and forth between the East-West. Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's a very, very cool thing because, I mean, a little bit like you said, like for certain people, there really is just a community of people who just recognize, almost a cult, that this person is important and we need to keep it alive. Towns has the same thing. And, there's just certain sort of almost shibboleths, that like it's a password. Like if you realize that Graham Parsons not being in the Country Hall of Fame is like the biggest mistake that anybody in the music industry has ever made, then you're my kind of person.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's
So
true.
It's
Yeah.
really cool. And of course, it's just great music. Like, there's no way around it. It's just everything he did. You know, even the stuff that you can tell on some of the albums was maybe not as well formed as it could have been. Like, everything he did was just magic in one way or
He
another.
was also a hippie too,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there you go. You know,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it was really, that was the thing. It was all those things put together made Graham. It wasn't him being a great country artist, or it wasn't him being a great rock person. It was what he put into that, you know, and how he mixed the soul element and you know, the R&B element into the music that's never been really done before. You know, with pedal steel, you know, playing a Detroit R&B tune or something. It's just never been done before.
Right, right. And I mean, I think that's one of the amazing things to see is for a guy who really had such a small catalog of work over such a short lifetime.
5 years he did all that in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
that blows my mind to think
so
about.
influential.
Yeah.
I mean, has anybody ever had 5 years like that, really?
I don't know.
I mean, the International Submarine Band alone would have been pretty impressive for just about anybody. But then you go take over the Byrds, one of the biggest bands in the world, and it's just like, boom, this is my band for one album only, but this is my band now, boys.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty cool stuff.
And there's stories too, you know. He auditioned for oh God, what was Bob Dylan's manager's name? Grossman.
Yes.
And he auditioned with his high school band for Grossman, and Grossman wanted to sign him, except they were too young, and so he walked out of the room. And the Shilohs also, what cool parents they had. When they were 17, they got to go to New York for the summer from Florida. So you have these 16, 17-year-old kids, and I think that was their age, but they were still in high school.
Right.
And they went to New York for a summer and played in Greenwich Village and did all that whole folk scene thing with this Shiloh's band, which was kind of like a Kingston Trio type thing. And they auditioned for Grossman, and they also got asked to play on oh God, what's the name of the show? The big talk show that was in that day and age that the Beatles were on. Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan, yes.
Yeah, they got asked to play on the Ed
What
Sullivan
was that show? I don't know which show.
That
Come
show.
on,
That
show. You know.
Yeah, the Ed Sullivan show.
Yeah, gotcha.
So Graham had always
I did not know
always
that. That's
skipped
cool.
off these things,
right,
but never sticking. You know, like just these amazing opportunities were there, and kind of gravitated towards them, but for some reason he never landed on them.
Yeah, well, I think that was just part of his personality too. Like he was just obviously so great in so many ways, but also, you know, he always had that other side of him that wanted to pull him away and do other crazy stuff.
There's different theories to that, you know, but he didn't have to want for money.
That's true.
And so I think that changes your priorities a little bit, or at least changes your focus. You know, you can kind of go with your whim, which I definitely think is what he did. And that we're all benefiting from that artistic output, like you said. You know, in 5 years he did all that, and that's just really, it's mind blowing to me. You know, and there's so many other great artists too. You know, like you said, Towns and I mean, just so many people. Nick Drake, another one. You know, just a tragic figure, but awesome tunes. You know, I'm glad to be a part of it. You know. And do what I can. It's great to see, because when we first did it, you know, I asked people who knew who Graham Parsons was, and you know, it was like, you know, 3 people were raising their hands. You know, most people think Alan Parsons or something.
Right.
I've gotten that so many times, but now you come to a New South Shoe show, and you know how many people are Graham Parsons? How many people know Graham Parsons? 75% of the room raises their hands. You know, so I know right there. Hey, I've done my part to try to, you know, spread the gospel of Graham, and you know, he's an influence, and just a great, like I said, that whole thing has just become a really complete pleasurable thing to do, and it's no pressure. It's just fun, and it's good. It's done for the right reasons, and that's when music's great.
Yeah, absolutely great. I mean, that's almost exactly what we were talking about before. No matter what, like if you're out there to create good music, all the rest of it falls into place.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you get what you need, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, that's what it comes about. So anyway,
speaking of a Graham influence band,
indeed. Yes, the Rolling Stones would not have been the same without him, and don't let anybody tell you different.
That's right.
So, but yes, thank you for doing your part to keep that alive, because it's great stuff. Yeah. It really is. And also, thank you for joining us today. It was really great for you to make some time.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate everything that you do and supporting everybody. And it's really, we need people like you, and you're here and you're doing it, and that makes all the difference.
Well, thank you. I do what I can. But speaking of support, anybody listening who's in the Cleveland area, or even if you're not, because he says he's going to be on the road a lot more this year, so that'll be really good, get out there and support Brent Kirby, because he really is a great musician with whatever project he's working on. And the band that's playing tonight is Brent Kirby and His Luck. It's the first time I'm going to see him, so I'm really looking forward to it. But whether it's with them or with Hey Mavis or with the Jack Fords or with the New Soft Shoe, or even just coming out on a Wednesday night to Brothers Lounge and seeing the 10x3, he's usually up with 3 songs at the end. So
that's right.
It's great. So one way or another, get out there and check him out. And thank you once again for joining us, Brent. Sorry, I almost called you Graham there for a second. That would have been great, right? Thank you once again, Brent. It was a pleasure meeting you, or a pleasure speaking with you, and we'll enjoy the new band here in a few minutes.
All right. Thanks, Diesel.
This has been a No Surf Music Burning River Fireside Chat. This is your host, Jason D. Diesel Hamad, signing off. Remember, No Surf Music is your source for the best in Americana, alt country, indie rock, and more. For original reviews and interviews, visit nosurfmusic.com.